devil's been busy in your backyard.
Sure has, friends. Welcome back to 21st Century Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Bob Hieronimus. Our executive producer and research assistant is Laura Courtner. Engineer is Anita Brockington. Ancient sun-worshipping civilizations revered the sun as the god of astrology and the god of fertility, and an in-depth study of their treasures reveals their leaders were far more scientifically advanced and spiritually aware than we are today. They understood how our 28-day spinning sun determines personality and how it regulates the 28-day fertility cycle in females. Remarkably, each used the same enigmatic process to encode secrets into their treasures for future generations to discover for ourselves. Maurice Cotterell is an author, engineer, and scientist. In 1989, while working at Cranfield University as head of electrical and communications engineering, he found a way of calculating the duration of magnetic reversals of the sun. Using this knowledge, he was able to break the secret codes of ancient sun-worshipping civilizations and understand how the sun affects life on Earth. He has written 11 books, including 7 international bestsellers, and 3 museum pieces on ancient sun-worshipping civilizations, science, and spirituality, and several scientific papers. Welcome back to 21st Century Radio. This is Maurice's 4th appearance on 21st Century Radio, and he is joining us from County Cork in Ireland. Good evening.
Good evening, Bob. Thank you.
Oh, so glad you're there. This book, your book is more like an art book than, it's the kind of books I like, when you have color all over the place with images and symbols and many, many different interpretations of such things, Maurice. Would you tell our listeners what your new book, The Heavenly Matchmaker, The Secret Science of the Mind, Heart, Body, and Soul, is all about?
Certainly, Bob, yes. As the title suggests, it explains the secret science of the mind, the heart, the body, and the soul, and it explains the secret mechanisms of heaven, hell, and purgatory, what we are, where we are, and who we are.
Well, that sounds fascinating, but also it sounds incredible. How can anybody know anything about heaven, hell, and purgatory?
Well, this knowledge was not conceived by me. I simply decoded information concealed in the sculpture, the art, the jewelry, and the architecture of the sun-worshipping Maya of Mexico, the Mexica and Inca of Peru and Bolivia, the ancient Egyptians and Chinese, and the Celtic people of Europe. They all left behind secret knowledge to teach us how to get to heaven and how to avoid finishing up in hell.
Well, if they wanted to help us get to heaven, why would they encode it and make life difficult?
Well, we need to understand that their leaders were far more scientifically advanced and spiritually advanced than we are today. They understood what I call the super science of the sun. For example, they knew that our sun goes through periodic cycles of destruction and regeneration that bring global warming and ice ages over very long periods of time. And if you wish to leave behind information, then the chosen method of communication needs to be able to stand the test of time over thousands of years, which means that the method of communication must be able to withstand the ravages of time, such as earthquakes, floods, hurricanes, and so on. So they encoded their knowledge into their treasures and buried them inside stone-built pyramid-style structures. Another consideration when trying to convey information over long periods of time is the chosen means of communication. For example, there's no point in using a written language because languages change over long periods of time. For example, the Maya of Mexico used the Indian Quiche language, but that was succeeded in Mexico by the Spanish language. Now, languages come and go over time depending on wars and conflict, so it's better to encode secrets using pictures, because a picture speaks 1,000 words. They also encoded information using numbers, because all humans have 10 fingers. We can all count up to 10 or 20 if you include the toes. So information can also be conveyed using numbers, which are common to all languages.
Yes, indeed. But why is the knowledge secret?
Well, it had to be kept secret to stop bad people from getting to heaven, which explains why they went to such lengths to conceal it by encoding it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that makes sense. Well, how did they encode it?
Well, the actual method of encoding tells us a lot about the leaders and who they were, what they were capable of. All of those leaders used the same methods to explain the mysteries of life, why we are born, why we die, and why this has to be.
Yes, indeed. Well, what information were they trying to convey?
The stories they left behind, Bob, say that hell consists of two parts, the inner part and the outer part. The inner part is the hellfire of the sun. The outer part, the planets, is what is known as Purgatory, the place where hearts are purged of sin. The stories explain how hell and purgatory work, the mechanisms at play that we see and sense around us. For example, they say that the primary mechanisms of hell are love, pain, time, astrology, and reincarnation. These have all been deliberately designed to make us miserable during our life here in purgatory.
Whoa, that does make you feel pretty miserable. How does purification come from pain?
Well, before I get into that, let's just go through these, the love, the pain, the time, astrology, and reincarnation. Let me take them one at a time, otherwise we'll get a bit bogged down.
Okay.
Let's consider love, first of all. Few people know what love actually is. There are, in fact, many types of love. For example, the love of food is gluttony. The love of sex is lust. The love of activity is distraction. The love for a friend is camaraderie. The love for a pet is attachment. The love of alcohol is the thirst to escape. The love of money is greed. And spiritual love is a sincere and genuine wish for the intellectual, physical, and spiritual well-being of another living thing. But we don't search for any of those. The love we search for is romantic love, the all-consuming, hormone-induced insanity that, like a roller coaster, feels wonderful on the way up and gut-wrenching on the way down. The brain's driven by chemical software called hormones. Men are driven by testosterone and women by estrogen and progesterone. If you put the wrong software into a computer, it goes crazy. When you kiss someone romantically, you download their software, which makes you go crazy, and they download yours, which sends you crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's how the hormone-induced insanity of love ensnares us. Now, once we understand what love actually is, it becomes clear that every human being actually has four bodies, not one. We have a physical body, an emotional body, which is the heart, an intellectual body, which is the brain, and a spiritual body, the soul, which is electromagnetic energy, what we call God, inside us. Now, the leaders of the ancient sun-worshipping civilizations say that the physical body is the devil and that the soul inside is God, the electromagnetic energy that drives the other three bodies. And what that means is that every human being must be half God and half devil. Now, good ideas come from God, and bad ideas come from the body. Now, love feels good and it pulls us towards others, whereas pain feels bad and pushes other people away. Now, purgatory has been deliberately designed to bring pain. For example, natural disasters, insects, disease, and old age all bring pain. A broken heart brings emotional pain, a nervous breakdown brings intellectual pain, and guilt brings spiritual pain. Then there's a very clever mechanism of time, which I touched on a few seconds ago. When the universe began, there was no such thing as time. The only thing that existed then was God, electromagnetic energy or light. Then God sacrificed a part of his own energy and created the physical world, or as Einstein said, E equals mc squared. That was when the Big Bang occurred and the physical world was created. Events then transpired. Some things happened before other things, and some things happened after other things. Time began when the physical universe was created. Time exists in the physical world but not in the spiritual world. The physical body grows old, but the soul inside does not. The soul inside feels the same at the age of 8 as it does at the age of 80. Now, in the physical world, time speeds up when we're happy, and it slows down when we're bored or unhappy. What that means is that no one in purgatory can be happy for very much time, which explains why everyone in hell is unhappy. Now, another mechanism, astrology, this has also been designed for us to live in purgatory. It's another crucial mechanism. Western sun sign astrology and Chinese astrology together produce 144 different types of personality, which means that we either like or dislike each other. Dislike leads to hate, and hate facilitates perpetual war. And we need to be mindful that there is no need to like or dislike what God has chosen to create. Those who do set themselves up against God. Which brings us on to reincarnation. On the death of the physical
there's one
body,
part. Wait a second. There's one part. I need to return to this purification. How does that come from pain? How does purification come from pain?
I'll get on to that. Just hang on a sec, Bob, because I'll just get into the reincarnation first. Otherwise, I'll lose my thread.
Okay, go ahead.
On death of the physical body, reincarnation ensures that high-voltage souls escape from the magnetic field and gravitational field of the earth and return to God, which means that God grows, which is good. Low-voltage souls return to earth for another chance at purification. Purification comes through suffering caused by pain. Now, hell could not work without these mechanisms, which are all discussed at great length in the book. So how does purification come from pain? Well, pictures of Jesus often show him pointing to his pure heart that radiates light. He's trying to tell us that to get to heaven, we need to purify the heart until it is so pure that it radiates light. When we feel pain, it causes confusion in the brain. The heart, the emotional body, then interrogates the brain, which is the intellectual body, asking, why do I feel this pain? The brain searches its memory and computes the possible reasons for the pain, then gets back to the heart. The heart then questions the brain again, saying, but why did this happen to me, or why did that happen to me, in this way or that way? In this way, the brain wrestles with the heart, and in so doing, the heart is purged of impurity, just as a wet rag, when wrung, is purged of water.
Mm-hmm.
The soul also contains impurity from previous lives, so as the heart is purged, it allows impurity contained in the soul to drain away into the heart. So in this way, the heart acts as a sump to empty the soul of impurity, and in so doing, the soul becomes pure. As it becomes pure, the voltage of the soul increases. Eventually, the high-voltage soul radiates light, but that only happens when we are ready to leave purgatory behind and get to heaven.
Okay, I now quite understand that a lot more. But we were just starting to get into, we got to take a break here. But when we come back, can we get into how astrology works and how the 12 different types of personality are created?
That's fine, Bob. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, we'll do that after we take this break. Yes, our guest is Maurice Cotterell, the Heavenly Matchmaker, the secret science of the heart, mind, body, and soul. Celtic Press, 2020. MauriceCotterell.com. All links are at 21stcenturyradio.com and ZaharaOnline.com. Audio archives are posted weekly for free on iTunes and on your YouTube channel.
Hello, this is Laird Scranton. I'm the author of Point of Origin, Göbekli Tepe and the Spiritual Matrix for the World's Cosmology. You are listening to 21st Century Radio with Dr. Bob Hieronimus, a great place to hear the latest cutting-edge ideas about any number of interesting topics.
Welcome back. Wow, I don't know what that sound is. It's a didgeridoo? Well, can we turn it off? Good, thank you. I'd appreciate that very much. Welcome back. Our guest is Maurice Cotterell, the Heavenly Matchmaker, the secret science of the heart, mind, body, and Soul, Celtic Press 2020. Can we get to astrology now?
Certainly can, Bob, yes.
Okay.
Can you explain how it works and why it works?
Please do.
Now, most people appreciate that the Earth spins on its axis every 24 hours. We call that one day. But what few people recognize or understand is that the Sun also spins on its axis. It takes 28 days for the Sun to spin once at the equator. Now, it actually spins faster at the North Pole and the South Pole, but I won't get into that just yet. That's called the differential rotation of the Sun's magnetic fields. But if we concentrate on the equatorial region of the Sun, every time the Sun spins once at the equator, it showers the Earth with different types of particles. These are positive particles and negative particles. The reason it does this is a result of the solar fusion process and the churning of the two magnetic fields as they differentially rotate. So as it spins, the equatorial region of the Sun radiates a different sequence of charged particles every month within any 12-month period. The alternating positive and negative particles travel to the Earth in what we now call a solar wind. And when they strike the Van Allen belts, which encircle the Earth, they squash and pull the Earth's magnetic field. They modulate the Earth's magnetism. Now, we know that magnetic fields cause genetic mutations in test tube baby experiments, and we know also that personality is genetically determined. This means that the 12 different codes of radiation from the Sun result in 12 different codes of magnetic field, which causes 12 types of genetic mutation in the early fetus at the time of conception, and as a result, 12 different types of personality each year on Earth.
So, what does this mean when they actually finish up with 144 types of personality? How does that come into being?
Well, that's all to do with Chinese astrology and Western sun sign astrology. You see, the problem is, when we're looking at this, astrologers talk about the moment of birth, and I'm talking about the moment of conception.
Yes, that's right.
So now, they are the actual same thing, because although they're 9 months different, there's a correlation between the Sun's radiation at conception and the radiation at birth. One is a mirror image of the other. The radiation at conception causes the fetus to attach to the womb wall, while the opposite radiation, the mirror image if you like, causes the baby to leave the womb 275 days later. So astrologers can quite legitimately use the moment of birth to explain the personality of the baby. They can also use an astrological chart to provide a SWOT analysis, which is used to examine the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities or threats that the child will face throughout its life. So it doesn't matter if you study conditions at conception or at birth. Now, the 144 different types of personality result from the fact that 12 types of personality are studied by Western sun sign astrologers and 12 by the Chinese cycle, which is a 12-year cycle, not a 12-month cycle. So that's how we finish up with 144, 12 different types, 12 months and 12 years.
But
now, of course,
go ahead.
The astrologers also say that the planets change things, and
yes,
we need to understand how that works.
Yeah,
If you can imagine, the solar system behaves like an old-fashioned vacuum tube, TV tube. Imagine that at one end, say the left-hand side, we have the Sun showering the Earth with a mixture of positive or negative electric particles, and at the other end, say on the right, we have the Earth or the TV screen. The planets Mercury and Venus, moving between the Sun and the Earth, deflect the beam of solar radiation striking the Earth. This causes small changes in the magnetic field of the Earth, which can affect the moment of birth and also the biorhythms of the individual following birth. The positions of the outer planets have the ability to accelerate the solar particle beam, increasing or decreasing the kinetic energy carried by the particles, thereby increasing or decreasing the effect of the particles themselves. Now, if we look at the Chinese astrology and question how that works, the ancient Chinese were aware that human personality, fate and fortune also depends upon a 12-year cycle caused by an 11.5-year sunspot cycle. Now, sunspots are dark regions on the sun's surface. They were studied by the ancient Chinese from as early as 2700 BC. The spots are caused by bubbles of magnetism rising to the surface of the sun. They come and go over a cycle of around 11.5 years. The magnetic field of each sunspot is so strong that it bends the light radiating from the sun so that each spot appears dark brown or black against the yellow background. Now, there are 12 different types of radiation during each 12-year period, which causes 12 types of personality. Each of these personalities are named after animals. First comes the rat in the first year, then the ox in the second year, followed by the tiger, the rabbit. Those are followed by 4 other similar personalities, the dragon, the snake, the horse, and the sheep. And then the final 4 of the 12-month sequence are the monkey, the rooster, the dog, and the pig. The first of each group have much in common and get along with each other. The same goes for the second of each group and so on. Opposite years, 6 years apart, do not get along with each other. Of course, you probably might be questioning why I refer to them as sun cycles, but the Chinese refer to them as moon cycles. And it's actually the same thing.
I see.
See, we have to remember that the sunspot cycle is caused by the 28-day fundamental solar cycle. The ancient Chinese couldn't detect or track the 28-day cycle, so they tracked the 29.5-day moon cycle instead. They then kept a record of the accumulated 1.5-day monthly errors and adjusted the calendar every year. And this explains why the Chinese New Year starts on a different date every year.
Well, I've never seen one of the things I enjoyed about the book was the fact that you go through great detail on the Chinese astrology. And I was surprised, I really was, because I misunderstood a number of things before that. So thank you for doing that.
That's okay. I mean, I've tried to be meticulous in explaining how the cycles work and why they work. And of course, these ancient civilizations didn't just worship the sun as the god of astrology. They worshiped the sun as the god of fertility. And that's because as the sun spins every 28 days, it affects the production of the fertility hormones, estrogen and progesterone, in the 28-day fertility cycle of females. And so not only is there a 28-day fertility cycle, but there's a 12-year cycle caused by the sunspot cycle. And it's this 12-year cycle which triggers puberty 12 years after conception. That's at the age of 11 years, 3 months. And the menopause 36 years later. And just going back to what we were saying earlier, this is how we get the 144 different signs, because of the 12 Western sun signs and the 12 Chinese signs. And I should mention that these personality appraisals appear in the book. It gives you a good grounding of the behavioral types of these, the 12 Western sun signs and the 12 Chinese signs. And they're nothing like the ones you'll find in any other book on astrology. This book does not concern itself with how wonderful you are or how wonderful other people are, because the wonderful parts of you and them didn't help save your last relationship and won't help save the next. It does, though, reveal the bad things about you and them, because it was the bad things that tore you apart or brought suffering into your life. If you want to know about the bad things about the other 11 signs of the zodiac, then I really can recommend the book. But if you don't want to hear the bad things about yourself, then you might wish to avoid the book entirely.
Well, I wouldn't want to do that. I mean, that to me was so enlightening when you went through all the different signs and things of that nature. And certainly was different from the way I learned astrology a long time ago. I wish I would have bumped into it this way before. But we were going to be talking a tiny bit about, reincarnation. We haven't touched on that, have we?
We did some time ago. Basically, souls, we have to start really at the very beginning and have a look how... we've already discussed what a human being is. A human being is half God and half devil. And what happens is when the sperm enters the ovum inside a female, the cells begin to divide and multiply. Now, they don't spontaneously divide and multiply. They have to, how can I put this? When they did test tube baby experiments, they put the sperm inside the egg and not a lot happened. And then what they discovered was that nothing happens until they provide an electric shock to the sperm and the egg together. and they call that the zygote, Z-Y-G-O-T-E. That's the early fetus in the first few days of the fetus. And what happens is, once the electric shock fuses the two together, the cells start multiplying. Now, of course, this raises the question of how can a natural fertilization take place in human reproduction when a sperm enters the egg during normal sexual activity? And what's happening there is when a human being has an orgasm, they radiate electromagnetic energy from the spine. It's like radio waves. And it's that orgasm, that voltage, fertilizes the egg and allows the cells to start multiplying. Now, as the cells start to multiply, the voltage grows. And because the voltage of the zygote is the opposite of God's voltage, let me explain why. Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared, really explains what's going on. What he's saying is energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. So what we're seeing is, with Einstein's equation, if we have energy on the left-hand side of the equation, in the beginning, when the universe was created, let's say God was 1,000,000 volts on the left-hand side of Einstein's equation, 1,000,000 volts of energy. Now, we know that the only way of growth, human growth, is through sacrifice. For example, a man can only grow to a certain level until he throws a sperm away, so he sacrifices a sperm. A woman can only grow to a certain level until she throws an ovum away, and once she throws the ovum away, she can produce children. And we know in the Bible it says God made man in his own image. So what this is saying basically is God cannot grow unless he throws a piece of himself away. So if we have, in the beginning, before the universe was created, let's say God was 1,000,000 volts, and let's say he throws away 100,000 volts. Those 100,000 volts cross Einstein's equation. It goes to the other side of Einstein's equation and becomes matter. Now, anything that goes to the other side of an equation like that changes its algebraic sign. So if on the left we've got 1,000,000 volts of God positive, and God sacrifices 100,000 volts, those 100,000 volts go to the right-hand side and become negative. We then have the Big Bang. At minus 100,000 volts explodes, and then the Big Bang occurs, and the physical universe is created. So on the one side of the equation, we have God, which is voltage now, and now it's gone down to 900,000 volts. On the other side of the equation, we have the equivalent of minus 100,000 volts, which is now the stars, the planets, the trees, the rocks, the boulders, the birds, the flowers. All of that has been converted into mass or matter. Now, when the sperm enters the egg and the cells grow, the voltage of the zygote, the early fetus, gets higher and higher. And after about 9 months, it gets to about, let's say, for example, about 5 volts. So the voltage of the baby grows to about minus 5 volts in the womb. Now, don't forget, this is the opposite of God's voltage, which is plus 900,000. So when the baby reaches plus 5 volts and it's just about to be born, it draws down plus 5 volts from God, another plus 5 volts. The plus 5 volt soul sticks to the minus 5 volt baby, and the baby becomes a human being with a body and a soul. And that's how we acquire the soul in the first place. Now, as the baby grows up, if the baby loves its neighbor, its voltage will grow. And if its voltage grows, let's say after 70 years, its voltage goes up to, say, 10 volts, then it's got enough energy to leave the Earth's magnetic field and gravitational field and return to God where it came from. But now, if we remember, God sacrificed only 5 volts, but now it's getting back 10 volts. So God has grown. So God grows through mankind, which acts as a conduit. Now, let's say that's a good soul. In fact, to get to heaven, you really need about 100 volts, not 10 volts. You need enough voltage to radiate light from the head. This is why pictures of the saints in these religious pictures show the saints with light radiating from their head. They're high-voltage souls. But take the example of that 5-volt baby now who grows up and hates everybody. And what will happen is his voltage will fall. So when his voltage falls, he can't escape the magnetic field of the Earth. So what he does is he reincarnates as a lower voltage baby. So he comes into the world less beautiful, less healthy, and he suffers in his next lifetime on Earth because he's perhaps only a 2-volt baby with a 2-volt soul, because the baby attracts the soul down, don't forget. So then what will happen is it's like being in an elevator in a tall building. In one lifetime, our voltage goes up. In the next lifetime, it goes down. In the next lifetime, it goes up. In the next lifetime, it goes down. So we're going up and down in this elevator, and we can't get to the roof to get the helicopter to take us to heaven. And that is the problem with being in purgatory. It's very, very difficult to escape from hell. And this is what reincarnation is all about. God created the world so that he could create life. Life creates purity. Life is pure. Life on Earth can purify itself. If it does, its voltage increases. So when it dies, it goes back to God, and God gets bigger. Now, God is good, and God is love. So more God is more good, which is more love.
With that,
this is how God gets better, and the universe gets better.
And
this explains what reincarnation is.
Well, we've returned to other aspects of reincarnation in just a few minutes with our guest, Maurice Cotterell, the Heavenly Matchmaker, The Secret Science of the Heart, Mind, Body, and Soul, Celtic Press, 2020.
I'm John Anthony West, author of Serpent in the Sky, The High Wisdom of Ancient Egypt, and the leader of Magical Egypt Tours to Egypt. You're listening to 21st Century Radio with Dr. Bob Hieronimus.
Brother John has passed to the other side some time ago. Sure do miss him. We had such fun in those old days. Well, welcome back to 21st Century Radio. The book we're talking about is The Heavenly Matchmaker, The Secret Science of the Heart, Mind, Body, and Soul. It's published by the Celtic Press in 2020. Our guest is Maurice Cotterell, and all links are at 21stcenturyradio.com and zaharaonline.com, and audio archives are posted weekly for free on iTunes and on your YouTube channel. Okay. Maurice, are you with me?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. You believe that the greatest confirmation of reincarnation comes from Christianity. How so?
Well, the most important date in the Christian calendar is not Christmas Day, as we might imagine, but it was the day Jesus was reborn.
That's right.
After dying on Good Friday, he was reborn on Easter Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And that tells us that reincarnation, he came back to tell us that reincarnation is real. And what we find about these ancient civilizations is that Jesus came back many, many times. I mean, I've documented them all at great length in the book. The first time he appeared as Lord Krishna in India, and Krishna, translated from the Greek, means the anointed one. And then he came back as Tutankhamun, and Tutankhamun means the son of God. And then I show in the book how he reincarnated as the king of Hockdorf, because there was a body found from the Celtic people about 500 BC, and in it was a Celtic warrior surrounded by all sorts of artifacts. And when you decode the artifacts, it tells you that he was a reincarnate of Jesus. The same goes for Central America, where the 30-ton Olmec heads are also reincarnations of Jesus, and also another artifact known as the Olmec stone face. That's from about 500 BC. Next in this lineage comes Buddha, who was actually a reincarnation of Lord Krishna. That was about 550 BC. And Buddha was known as the illuminated one. And all of the information and all of the proof of this is all laid out in a book, and I would say it's irrefutable because there's so much of it. After Buddha came Qin Shi Huang Ti. He was a leader of the Chinese people in around 220 BC, and he left behind his secrets in the terracotta warriors in Xi'an in China. After Qin Shi Huangdi came Jesus, who died in around AD 32. And he left behind his secrets in the Holy Grail and the Tara brooch, which are today kept in the Dublin Museum. And again, this is all set down in the book, and the evidence is given as to why this is the way, this is the case. After Jesus appeared, he appeared again as Viracocha Pachacamac in Peru around AD 290, and then as Viracocha, which is AD 550. Now, Viracocha means foam of the sea, and it refers to the perfect being, because Viracocha is depicted as a crab, because the crab lives on the shore and in the water. It lives in the foam of the sea. And so what the legends of Peru say that Viracocha Pachacamac, that was one reincarnation of Jesus, and Viracocha both lived in Peru. They both walked the lands of Peru performing miracles. They healed, they restored sight to the blind, and they performed all kinds of miracles. And they left their treasures, secrets in their treasures, which are the Nazca lines, the Gateway of the Sun at Tiwanaku in Bolivia. And then they reincarnated as St. Aidan in Ireland, he was a monk, a Christian monk, who produced the Lindisfarne Gospels, the illuminated manuscripts. And when he died, he came back as Lord Pacal in Mexico in AD 655, the year 655. Now, Lord Pacal is derived, the name Pacal is derived from Pasach, which refers to the Passover, which took place at Easter when Jesus died. So Lord Pacal was trying to tell us he was reincarnation of Jesus. And he left his stories behind in his tomb lid in the Pyramid of Inscriptions, in what we now know, or what I call, the Lid of Palenque. And the Lid of Palenque is a Bible carved into stone by the Maya. And it's a beautiful carving. It's about 12 foot long, 7 foot wide, about 12 inches deep, weighs about 5 tons, carved with a very ornate carving on the top. And all of the information I've been giving you this evening is all contained in the Lid of Palenque. There are several codes around the Lid of Palenque, and when you break the codes, you can find about 100 different stories inside the carving, moving video pictures. These are actually videos. Now, this is going to be hard to believe, but if you go to my website, www.mauricecotterell.com, you'll see the videos and how they work. And these miracles were left behind by Lord Pacal, who was an incarnation of Jesus. And he left behind lots of these, what I call Maya transformers, these video-making carvings and pieces of jewelry and paintings. They come in all different forms. Now, after Lord Pacal, we have the Gothic cathedrals that were built around AD 1150. Now, I'm not sure which incarnation of Jesus created those cathedrals, but I do know the one that after that came Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui in Peru. And he left behind the carved stone blocks in Peru, and at Machu Picchu, all the carvings and the stonework of the temples in Peru. So we have a lineage here of Jesus who keeps coming back, giving the same message over and over again to tell us that we have more than one life. We have as many lives as it takes to get to heaven, and we will keep on coming back until we love each other. Because, you see, in the physical world, if I have $1 and you have $1 and we exchange them, we both finish it with $1. In the intellectual world, if I have an idea and you have an idea, and I give you mine and you give me yours, I finish it with 2 ideas. It doesn't cost me anything. And you finish it with 2 ideas, and it doesn't cost you anything. We can double our intellectual wealth at no cost. Now, the same thing works with our emotional well-being, our emotional wealth. If I love you, my voltage goes up. And if I hate you, my voltage goes down. And that's why these ancient civilizations encoded all of this information in all of these treasures around the world. Not just in one place, but they're all over the world from different time periods, thousands of years apart. And in the Bible it says, knock and the door will be opened. Ask and you shall receive. Seek and you shall find. And Jesus says, every hair on your head is numbered. And what he's trying to tell us is that every hair on your head has been designed to be on your head. Everything is important. And the most important thing about life is God, which is light. God is voltage. God is electromagnetic energy. God doesn't do anything. God is God. God is energy. If you put God into a refrigerator, which has been designed to cool things down, then the refrigerator will cool things down. If you put God into an electric kettle, which has been designed to get hot with God, voltage, then when God enters the kettle, the water boils. If you put God into your computer, the computer comes alive, and you can send and receive emails and do all sorts of neat things. There is no such thing as intelligence. All there is God. God can do anything. When you put God inside a human being, we become spatially aware. We have consciousness, and we can see the dimensions that are around us. But what the ancient civilizations are telling us is that there is a fourth dimension, and there may be others. There's a fourth dimension because they show us how to use these dimensions. The only way to decode this information is to use a decoding process, which is through access of the fourth dimension. And again, this is shown graphically and pictorially in the book.
Well, I am so glad you covered that material, especially at this particular time. When we are going to be taking a break soon. But the pictures in the book are extraordinary. Did you paint any of them, or you have a specific artist that does all of this for you?
I do it all myself.
You do it all yourself? Okay, well that's extraordinary in itself, because all of these are so beautiful. I wish we were on television right now. We could hold this up to the screen, and you would see it's gorgeous. This is to me, it's shining all over in the colors. Every page. It's high quality paper, and it's a hardback that I enjoy reading, especially because my hands have held so many books that they're getting sore at this particular time. And it is beautifully designed. And one of the other things that we will talk about, pardon me. Oops, sorry, it's time to go. We'll be right back with our guest Maurice Cotterell, the Heavenly Matchmaker, the secret science of the heart, mind, body, and soul, and learn a great deal more. And here comes my favorite.
For the king.